Asking Carl, I propose to take questions 1 to 4 together. My department works closely with the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade, which has overall responsibility for Brexit. A comprehensive set of structures has been put in place to ensure that all departments and their agencies are engaged in detailed preparedness and contingency activities. Within my department, staff across several divisions contribute to the work on Brexit. Brexit is a core part of the work of the International, EU and Northern Ireland Division, which is headed by a second Secretary-General who acts as Irish Sherpa for EU business, including Brexit issues. The division advises me in my role as a member of the European Council and in respect of government consideration of Brexit-related issues, including negotiations, as well as Northern Ireland affairs and British-Irish relations. The Economic Division of my department advises me in the development and implementation of national and sectoral economic policies to ensure the economy is well placed to respond to opportunities and threats, including Brexit. To augment this ongoing work, my department also has a dedicated unit on Brexit preparedness and contingency planning. This unit, working closely with the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade, assists several groups that oversee preparations. The unit provides assistance to a SecGen group chaired by the Secretary-General of the Government. The unit also assists a senior officials group of assistant secretaries on no-deal planning. It's been meeting on a regular basis, planning based on the Government Contingency Action Plan published last December and updated on the 30th of January. The plan provides detailed sectoral analyses and approaches to mitigate the impacts of no deal. My department, in conjunction with the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade, also jointly chairs a senior officials group on Brexit-related legislation, which oversaw the development of the withdrawal of the United Kingdom from the European Union Consequential Provisions Act 2019, signed into law by the President on St Patrick's Day. Work is continuing in parallel on complementary secondary legislation. The decision of the European Council to extend Article 50 prevented a no-deal Brexit on the 12th of April and has significantly reduced the overall risk of no deal. However, given the ongoing political uncertainty, that risk has not been fully averted, and prudent preparations by government for all possible scenarios will continue.
Deputy Brennan Howlin.
It was reported that the British government had stepped down their frontline Brexit preparations, and from what we saw announced over the weekend, those preparations were massive and costly, costing billions, with thousands of civil servants deployed. I agree with, as I understand what the Taoiseach has just said, that we shouldn't, and indeed can't afford to be complacent in relation to the prospect yet on the table of a no-deal Brexit. Yesterday too, the German Foreign Minister indicated his country's impatience by saying that the German patience was wearing thin and there could be no further extension beyond October. So far as we know, little over half of the 84,000 businesses in Ireland that trade with the UK has applied for Irish customs registration, which will be needed in the case of a no-deal Brexit. The President of the Road Haulage Association has accused state agencies of still being, and I quote, unable to answer basic questions. So, while I appreciate what the Taoiseach has said so far, I think fundamental groups like the Irish Road Haulage Association deserve to have their concerns addressed and their real questions answered. And it is, and would the Taoiseach agree with me, a cause of worry that little over half of the businesses doing trade with the United Kingdom have yet registered for their customs registration, which would be required. And what are you going to do about it?
And whereas the Taoiseach correctly says that the additional extension in time for the British Government and Parliament to get its house in order does, of course, lessen the prospect of an imminent crash, it is important to state that that threat is not entirely removed. I think it's also important to remember that there isn't any good Brexit for us. And in fact, talking to people across the country, those in farming will tell you that the Brexit damage is being done as we speak. So whereas the extension, of course, gave cause for a sigh of relief we need to remember that the uncertainty and the threat, the imminence of Brexit, hard or soft, is doing a whole lot of damage in any event. We didn't have the opportunity to respond to Speaker Pelosi's contribution here this afternoon, but I wish to record my warm welcome for her words, where she has set out very clearly the position that any trade deal between the United States of America and Britain would not be a runner in the event that there is damage done to the Good Friday Agreement. The United States has invested considerably, diplomatically, politically, for many people personally, in the development and delivery of the Good Friday Agreement and the peace process, and they will not give way easily on the Good Friday Agreement. So if Brexiteers of the Tory or the DUP variety have an ear to this House, I hope they heard loudly and clearly that damage done to our peace process and to our economy will have a real cost for them and their trading ambitions.
In a way, Ireland has been a little bit lucky that a potentially hard, disastrous Brexit has been averted, at least for a period of time. So I think in a way we now have a breathing space as a country to, in fact, confirm changes that, if you like, are possibly coming anyway, and to get the island more ready for the fact that one way or another the relationship between the United Kingdom and the European Union is changing. I think it's important in terms of ports like the Port of Cork and Rosslare and Dublin that that breathing space is utilised, because, to be honest, I think in the future what we will need are ships going directly from the continent to those ports. And as you know, there was quite a shock to Rosslare when the Irish Ferries is going to Dublin now. And to be honest, speaking from a Dublin point of view, with the level of traffic that is actually on the M50 at the moment, it's very difficult to envisage that practically all of the imports, exports to and from Ireland could end up coming through Dublin Port. Dublin doesn't have the road infrastructure to take that. So I just think the breathing space, Taoiseach, I hope, can be utilised to beef up the development of Rosslare and the Port of Cork. I know quite a bit of work has been done in all three ports, but there's an awful lot more to do, particularly in being able to take large volumes that are intended for the southwest, the southeast, the Midlands, and to, in fact, have a situation where we are able to utilise all three ports to the maximum. I think that would be a good thing to do in terms of avoiding an over-Dublin focus in a Dublin that doesn't really have the route capacity to deal with all the trucks if they end up coming.
Deputy Micheál Martin.
On a number of occasions recently, Taoiseach, I've asked you about whether direct discussions have been held with the British government concerning the possible imposition of direct rule in Northern Ireland, which was threatened at the time, coming up close to a possible no-deal scenario for the United Kingdom. At a moment when two of the three strands of the Good Friday Agreement are suspended and the third is dysfunctional, the imposition of direct rule, I think, would be a further... Sorry? No, I'm dealing with no-deal preparation. I mean, this was threatened in the context of a no-deal. Look, if it allow me, Deputy, I'm entitled to ask questions. And what I want, Taoiseach, can you explain what discussions you've held with the British on these matters, and what do you intend doing to try and get the institutions of the agreement re-established? 2 years after they were collapsed, because of a heating scheme, their absence has caused real damage to the people of Ireland. And I agree, and I welcome very much what the Speaker said today in terms of no US-UK trade deal if any harm comes to the Good Friday Agreement. But we must also put on the record that the greatest harm being done at the moment to the Good Friday Agreement is the absence of institutions in Northern Ireland, the collapse of the Executive, the collapse of the Assembly. And I think it's quite extraordinary. And I think that's something that needs to be dealt with. In terms of no-deal planning, Taoiseach, the failure to publish no-deal notices by March 29 needs to be explained, given how the risk of a no-deal was significantly higher then than it has been in the last 2 weeks. It's a very interesting fact that a lot of the no-deal notices came up after the 29th of March. And by March 29, we now know that 50% of businesses that trade with the United Kingdom had not completed the most basic step to continue that trade. June is the next moment when potentially no deal could happen. What efforts are now underway, Taoiseach, to make sure that we have far better response and our economic exposure is addressed before then? Current approaches clearly didn't work by March 29th. Is something new now to be tried with the sectors out there and with the businesses out there? And I would equally make the point that we're all focused on the no-deal scenario, but equally what's been termed soft Brexits or less severe Brexit also has impact. I mean, I'm talking to IBEX, some companies have millions and millions of inventory now put in storage in Britain, up to 4 months in the agri-food sector. So it is having an impact on many companies out there, not to say the least of the compliance costs that would emerge in the event of some form of Brexit.
I'm anxious to do 3 groups today, so Taoiseach, 4 minutes to respond.
Thank you. Just in terms of no-deal preparedness, we haven't taken the decision to step down our preparedness in the way the United Kingdom has, but they were complete or close to complete at the end of March in any case. I was asked by Deputy Howlin about the uptake of customs numbers by businesses. Revenue has identified 84,000 businesses that may potentially need a customs number. That's an EORI number, an economic operator registration and identification, though they mightn't all in fact need one. So far, 45,000 businesses have these, and around 4,800 customer numbers were issued in the last 3 months alone. Having an EORI number is the minimum requirement for businesses to be able to move goods from or through the UK in a no-deal scenario. The application can be done quickly and easily through the Revenue Secure online service, and it's done at no cost. Companies should also ensure that they or an agent on their behalf have a facility that is software to make a customs declaration, and also know the commodity code of their products, as this is used to determine the import and customs duties payables. Last week, customs officers were present in Dublin and Rosslare and on board a number of ships where they issued information leaflets to help importers, exporters and truck drivers with concerns or questions about what they need to do post-Brexit. So I don't think any importer or exporter can say that they're not informed at this stage. In terms of business supports, the uptake has been as follows. When it comes to the Brexit loan scheme, there have been 567 applications, of which 511 have been approved. On the Brexit scorecard, over 5,000 Brexit scorecards have been completed by Enterprise Ireland companies and nearly 1,000 by Leo companies. The Be Prepared grants, 182 have been approved. On the Market Discovery Fund, 140 projects have been approved. On the Prepare to Export scorecard, 3,000 are completed. On the Customs Insights online course, 1,200 people have participated on these. On the Agile Innovation Fund, 47 projects have been approved. In relation to Brexit advisory clinics, 16 have taken place with over 1,200 people present. The Brexit Act On programme, this funds consultants to help improve resilience. 210 plans have been completed. On the Strategic Consultancy Grant to assist DI clients, 1,000 grants have been approved. For the online retail scheme, 11 retailers were awarded funding in February, and there's going to be a second call now. In terms of smaller businesses supported by local enterprise offices, 518 clients have been approved with grants for technical assistance, 247 for Lean for Micro, 562 mentoring participants solely focused on Brexit have been provided as mentors, and 4,213 participants have attended Brexit seminars or events. For Intertrade, 2,419 SMEs have directly engaged with Intertrade Ireland for advice. 1,400 applications for vouchers, of which 1,200 have been approved so far. In terms of the public information campaign, I think people will be familiar with the Getting Ireland Brexit Ready campaign. There have been 101 stakeholder events in 21 counties. Recently, advisory clinics in Laois and Dublin, Monaghan, Cork and customs training in Laois. In terms of financial assistance available, €300 million has been set aside in the Brexit loan scheme for affordable loans of between 25,000 and 1.5 million to eligible businesses. A separate €300 million future growth loan scheme for SMEs, including farmers, that's in place to support strategic long-term investment post-Brexit, thus reorientating the products people make away from the UK market. The Enterprise Ireland Be Prepared grants are there. The Start to Plan vouchers are there from Intertrade, and the Market Discovery Fund and Agile Innovation Fund, which I mentioned earlier. In addition, the legislation passed by these houses includes the introduction of postponed accounting to allow all traders for a certain period to account for VAT in their bi-monthly VAT return instead of at the point of import, as well as a provision to enable Enterprise Ireland to provide a lending investment instruments for client companies to help Irish businesses stay competitive, innovate and grow. It is important for businesses and other organisations to be aware of the supports available, and if not already doing so, to take this additional time as an opportunity to take the necessary steps. As mentioned about haulage, and when it comes to road haulage into the UK, this is facilitated by the EU's community licence, which will allow international hauliers from member states, including Ireland, to move freely within the EU. As part of contingency planning, the European Commission is proposing to adopt a temporary unilateral measure for 9 months after Brexit to allow access for UK hauliers to the EU, provided they do the same. Although there is a concern about delays at Dover and Calais, and it's still uncertain as to whether Irish trucks can or will be fast-tracked through Dover and Calais, but that is, of course, what we're seeking.
Thank you. We now proceed.